everybody, and welcome to another live chat. And we have the lovely Jemma, who is a Vibe ambassador, but also we can't, as Vibe, we kind of went out and asked for people to tell their stories and see if there's anybody out there. Your story just stuck out to me because I think reading through just the brief of it, you've been through absolutely everything that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be really good to kind of get you on so you could talk through it and just, give anybody any tips or anything like that. So,
yeah.
Hi, Jemma. You have got a lovely horse called Seaside Sizzler. Is that
correct? A bit of a tongue twister.
You love them. Don't you just love the racing names to give them?
Oh, no.
Out of this world. So, start from the beginning then. How did this one come into your line?
So I had a previous horse who was retiring, slowing down, and basically the vet sort of said, it's time to just retire him. He was 27, he had a field injury, and they said just keep him hacking to tick him over, but that's basically the end of it, sort of thing, competing and everything, which was quite gutting because he was my first horse. But I'd always loved the idea of an ex-racehorse retraining. I've got a friend who her mum rehomes racehorses. They retrain them and then sell them on to forever homes, and I just loved the idea of it. So I went around and I did have a look at a lot. I mean, before I got Sears I think I viewed about 16 horses.
Wow.
And they just, some of them weren't right. Some of them were sort of being misadvertised. And I actually got to the point where I had 2 failed viewings and I just went, I'm not going to even look anymore. I don't think I can do this. And a friend of mine found a lovely charity called Heroes, who are based in Wantage, Oxfordshire. Mm-hmm. And she said, go and have a look there. You don't have to, set your heart on going to see one. You're going there, and they've got, at the time, they had over 140 looking for homes.
Wow.
And they'd all come from different backgrounds. Some of them had long careers, some of them had shorter careers, some had injuries that they were rehabilitating before they found homes for, and some were just there for their retirement. They weren't even there for rehoming. It's an amazing charity. And so I rung them up, and you pay a donation to go and view, which avoids sort of time wasters and things like that, joyriders, etc. And the money goes all back into the horses that are there. And they basically, what they do is they give you like a shopping list. So you tell them everything that you want, what you're looking for, height wise, what you're looking to do, so they can find the horses that they've got there that best suit your needs and what you're looking for. And then what they do is you turn up, and one by one they bring them out and they trot them all up. So you can have a look at them all trotted up, how they move, etc. Then you decide which ones that you want to sort of ride and have a look further. But before they do anything, they put you on another one as a sort of riding trial, so they can assess how you ride as well to make sure that you're best suited to the ones that they're showing you. My riding trial was on Sizzler, and they put me on him because he wasn't the easiest horse, and they wanted to make sure that I was capable of riding something that wasn't sort of your push button pony, which is what, ex racers, then they're not all like that. Some are quite easy to do, and some are a little bit more challenging. So he was actually really, really good for me, but I didn't like him. I think the thing was, I'd had my heart broken so many times throughout the viewing process that I was quite reserved, and I was worried about setting my heart on something again for something to go wrong. And he was everything that I wasn't looking for, even to the point where I categorically said I didn't want a chestnut, and I was looking for a grey. And I walked past a barn and I saw this massive grey that was everything that I was looking for on paper, but he had kissing spine, really, really bad. And unfortunately, I found out that 3 months after I'd rehomed Sis, he was actually put to sleep where it was so bad. And a friend of mine that came with me, she said, this horse is perfect for you. what aren't you seeing? And I said, I don't know, I think it was a head and heart scenario. Sizzler was perfect on what I needed, but the grey horse was what my heart on paper was. And I said, right, I need to go away and come back next week and just come and have a look at him, because all of the other horses that they brought out, some of them were a bit small, some of them just didn't fit what I wanted. Anyway, so I came back a week later and I'd already made up my mind. I'd watched the videos back riding and I thought he was perfect. And I just said, I want to take him for a hack, because on my previous horse, I'd had an accident hacking, and that was one of my fear spots. And someone walked past us while we was waiting for the other girl to tack up a horse to take us, and someone walked past with his field buddies, and he absolutely lost his marbles, rearing, backing up. We backed up into a lorry, and my friend went, oh my goodness, she's going to say no now. She thought that was it, but actually I felt so confident on him. I was like, yeah, this is my horse, I'm going to have him home. And 2 days later I had him home.
Wow. And was it, how big is he, Ben? When you were saying about the sizes, how big is Sis?
He is actually bigger than I thought. Gay chestnuts. He is 17 one hands, but on his advert they said he was 16 one, so I'm sure it was a typo.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's 14 now.
Oh, right. So no, it's not as if he was a youngster and he's grown and that's just long.
And my old horse was 15 too, so it was a bit of a height difference. But I'm quite tall, so when you look at the pictures of me riding him, he doesn't look as big as he actually is in person, because I'm 5'9", so we sort of balance each other out.
Yeah. So what was your first moments like with him? So you've decided to go for this chestnut, which, let's be honest, chestnuts have always had a bad rap.
Yeah.
With your grey, what was the first few weeks with Sis like?
Chaotic. So the first day I got him home, they told me that he crib bit at feed times, but when I'd got him home, new environment, new owner, new everything, he was a real bad cribber. He would crib and crib and crib, and we were actually at a yard which I'd been at previously with my old horse, and they didn't like vices, and he was cribbing a lot, and I gave him a few days to settle before I got on him. And 3 days into having him, I went, right, okay, it was a nice quiet morning. It was just me and the yard manager at the yard. And I said, will you just come in the school with me so I can get on him? And I just wanted to walk him around the school. The minute I sat on him, he reared up and knocked me out.
Oh dear.
And that was my first impression. And I went, oh my goodness, what have I done? And he was a totally different horse to what I'd tried at the charity. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I came round, I'd managed to stay on him, but I sort of was just a bit confused about what had happened. She said, oh, he's just reared up. And I went, okay. And then we carried on, and I walked him around the school, and I said, right, okay, we've walked around, let's put him back in his box. And then that evening, a friend came down the yard with me, and I got back on him in the evening, and he walk trotted in the school nicely. I didn't want to do too much of him for the first week. About 2 days after that, I actually got given my notice at the yard because they said that he was crib biting too much. We had to leave. And that was literally, I'd had him for 5 days, and I thought, what am I going to do? This was a yard that I knew really well. I'd been there before. I had friends there, and the yard that I'd come from with my other horse, they didn't have space. And I went, I've just got this new horse. I'm going to have to move to a yard that I don't know anyone. And I was really, really scared, and ended up going to a yard where it was just a girl that I knew with her mum and their horses. So it was quite private, and it was only 5 minutes down the road, so I took him there. And it was a really upsetting, actually, because I sort of thought, I've had to move him again, and then I was worried that the charity would think that I wasn't capable, and it was quite stressful. But as soon as we got him to this other yard, he was just really settled. And as soon as he went into his new box, he had a roll, and he seemed a lot happier. and it was a bit quieter, so that actually worked out quite well. But then after about 2-3 weeks, I decided to start hacking him. So where he'd come from was the charity was quite countryside-y, whereas we were a bit more on sort of the roads and things where this new yard was. And I took him out for a hack with the friend at the time initially, and he was good as gold, poodled around. But then a couple of days later tried to take him out on his own, and he just wouldn't go. He'd get to the end of the driveway and he'd just rear and spin. And I think it must be the first sort of 6 months of having him, I did just ring my mum every day crying, thinking, what have I done? He was so nappy. He was really, really difficult. I thought, I wanted to take things slow with him, but I couldn't, even just to go for a walking hack, I couldn't even get him out of the yard. And it was really, really hard to click with him. And I really thought, we're not gelling. But I kept saying to myself, I need to give it the chance, because being at a race yard, obviously they're with their jockeys and they're with the trainers and things, but they don't have that, I guess, that one-on-one as such connection with an owner, if in that sort of sense. And so I sort of was, I need to stick by it, because at some point he's going to realize that I am there to help him. I'm there to, click with him and things. And then I had a few falls on him. The first fall was a bit of a shock, because it was quite a far way down. It was quite a long way to the floor. And that's when he started to get quite nappy in the school as well. And he just started to become quite dangerous to ride. And we was at a yard where the landlord of the yard didn't like the fields being trashed over the winter. And at this point we were coming into the winter, and he started to lose a lot of weight. And the people I was at the yard with, they said, oh, it's just normal, thoroughbreds lose weight in the winter, you're being over dramatic, you're overthinking it. And then he stopped eating, and I thought, something's really not right here. And I wasn't 100% knowledgeable in horses. I'd shared, and then I'd had my old horse who was really old, and I'd had him for so long that it was easy. But to have Sizzler was a totally different ballpark, and I just knew in my gut something wasn't right. And if I can get the picture up, here's something I prepared earlier.
Do like a good prep.
Hopefully you can see this, but he dropped that.
Yeah.
And this was one day I just came down, I took his rug off.
Wow.
And he went like that. And I went, something's not right. But I kept again being told, no, there's nothing wrong with him. You're just being paranoid. And so I ended up getting a vet out in the daytime while the other people at the yard were at work, because I sort of felt embarrassed, and I felt that I felt like I was being made out to be paranoid, but I just had this inkling that something wasn't right. And the vet came out and she went, right, we need to take some bloods, and we're going to need to take him in now. And I went, right, okay. And we actually found out that he had grade 3 bleeding internal ulcers.
Wow.
And she said, if I hadn't got them out, say in 2 weeks time, in 2 weeks I wouldn't have had a horse. He was literally, his insides were eating themselves. And the reason he wasn't eating was because he was in so much pain, he couldn't eat. He was too scared to eat because he knew it would just hurt him. And oh God, it gets me really upset thinking about it, because it's just the amount of pain he must have been in. And the vet said that so they did other tests to make sure that the ulcers wasn't a secondary problem to anything else, and actually turned out the ulcers had stemmed from it is possible that he could have had some low grade ulcers from coming from racing, but the majority of them had come from where this yard for 4 months, closed the field over the winter, and there was no turnout at all. And he was just getting bored, he was getting stressed, and then it just all sort of came about. And so the vet said to me, when he comes out of hospital, you're going to need to move him to somewhere that he can be turned out, because he just needs to go out in the field and be a horse. And she said, don't expect to be riding him anytime soon, which I was absolutely fine with.
Yeah.
The yard that I absolutely loved and wanted to go to, which was where my old horse was, and was sort of living his sort of semi-retirement over there, they had a space coming up but 3 weeks time, so I had to find somewhere temporarily for 3 weeks. And I was working at a yard at the time, and my boss at the time said, finish the shift, because this was a day that I was working with him. He said, let's just finish the yard, go and box him up, from there, and we'll bring him here and we'll just put him out in the field for a few weeks. And he said, I'll monitor it, I'll bring him in a few hours a day and build it up, because he hadn't been out for so long. And then 3 weeks later, we took him to the yard that I wanted him to go to, and that was the start of our recovery. Which was actually turned out really, really well. So I then decided that I wanted to do some groundwork with him, some bonding. And I will say, to this day, it was the best thing, as awful as it was going through it, was the best thing that ever happened to us, because it just clicked us together. And I think it's because he knew that, because every day I was treating him with this GastroGuard, and I was doing lots of on the ground things with him because I couldn't ride him. And I think he just knew that I was the one making him better. And so I started to do click training with him. Just little rewards, little fun things for him to do to keep him occupied. And he had a couple of friends out in the field that he was with, and he just turned into such a different horse, and he was so happy. And so it took 5 months to recover from those ulcers, because and that was 5 months of treatment every day, rescoping, and I think the vet bill came to about £7,500. Lucky for insurance. But
yeah, I've heard before that the treatment for ulcers is not cheap, to be honest, but
it's not. Do you know what? The scoping is the cheapest part. The scope was £210, but the treatment was about, I think it was about £900 or something a month. It was ridiculous, the amount of money. Because originally the first month he started off on GastroGuard, and then going forward they put him on Pentazole, because the vets sort of just changed suppliers. Do the same thing, but the Pentazole is about £100 more. So at least the insurance paid for it.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a good job you're insured, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Best thing I've got.
Yeah.
So when he recovered from ulcers, he scoped clear, and I literally cried my eyes out the day that he scoped clear. And I then decided to take him on a fun ride, just walking around at Windsor Great Park, with a friend who just sort of walked and trotted her horse anyway. And he absolutely blew his brains. It was just, he couldn't physically cope with, there was horses and things, and he actually reared up and fell on top of me.
Oh my goodness.
Luckily I had my body protector on, and I'll say that saved me that day, because I came off with no injuries at all, which I'm incredibly lucky about, and I don't know how. But we got through that, and I'd started to get back on him and ride him and hack him and just build up his confidence. And he started to, from that yard, he was hacking out absolutely fine. He had no problems with it at all. But I found that once he'd been in and out of the vets, because he was going back there every month, he was progressively getting worse to travel and load. He would just rear up at the ramp and refuse to go onto the lorry. And it was only recently someone actually told me that if they've got ulcers and they travel, they tense their stomach up. So it could have been where he was in pain, where he was trying to balance himself in the lorry, or because he knew that he was going to the vets, but not 100% sure which one it is. But, you know, it could be a combination of both. And about 3 weeks after he scoped clear, he came in from the field with a really swollen weepy eye. And again, someone said to me, oh, it's probably just a fly in the eye, a bit of conjunctivitis. And another lady came up to me, who was always sort of kept herself to herself at the yard, and she said, I think you need a vet. She said, I think that's uveitis. And I went, I don't know what that is. Never heard of it, don't know what it is, wouldn't know how to look for it. So I got the vet out, and that's what it was. And it's a infection behind the pupil in the eye. And I don't know if you've heard of moon blindness.
No.
The eye basically goes sort of really, really glazed over, like white or blue, and they can't see out of it. And you have to put steroids in it to keep it clear. But with that it can also develop an eye ulcer. And so you have to have it checked every 2 days with this ink that they put in the eye to identify, because if you've got the eye ulcer, you can't use the steroid cream. So every 2 days for 2 weeks, we had the vet out, and found that it had developed an ulcer. So we did lots of treatment for that. And he has got some sight back in it, but he does have still partial blindness in that eye now. And it came from, some can be hereditary. His was from, they believe it was a trauma to the eye. So he must have done something in the field and caught himself. And that was really worrying as well, because if they put their head down to graze, the pressure can cause the eye to rupture. And a lot of horses unfortunately lose their eye from it. So that was a really scary thing. And I did start to look into, how to go about having a horse with one eye. And actually, I've seen so many incredible stories that, horses are so versatile. They just get on with it, and they realize that, oh, I've only got one eye. But there's still show jumpers, dressage horses that all go out and still compete and live a perfectly happy life with just one eye. And then in the weeks later, we ended up with, he bashed up his tendon really badly, and being a thoroughbred, very sensitive, it blew up like a balloon. And I was told to prepare for the worst, because they thought that he'd torn his common extensor tendon quite badly, but they couldn't scan it at the beginning because it was so swollen. So back onto box rest for that. And luckily 2 weeks later, we found out it was just bruised. But then he got kicked in the knee, and that got infected. So his knee then blew up like a balloon.
Oh my goodness. Do you know what? I thought I had a bad start with it. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I did forget to mention, actually, in the first week of the second yard, he cribbed on the fence and there was a nail sticking out, and he sliced his face open and had to have that stitched up as well. I forgot to mention that one. There's been so many that I forget.
Your vets must love you.
Do you know what? I've literally said to them, I pay their Christmas bonus. It's hilarious. They know him on, I ring up and say, hi, it's Gemma, and they know me.
Yeah.
And they know him. He had a little stable plaque at the yard when he was in there for ulcers. It was a running joke that he was a permanent resident there. And then we bypassed all of that, and we started to, box rest aside, back out in the field, back to really proper ridden work, consistent work. And he started to get fitter. And by getting fitter, he got a lot harder to handle. And I thought that he was difficult at the beginning, but he was just crazy. And I think it was where he was fit. It was a very different crazy to what he was at the beginning. It was I'm feeling amazing. And I could tell that I just knew it wasn't anything sinister. I just knew that it was just pure fitness. He's stronger. He wants to do things. He's sort of learning, finding himself, I think, because it must have been over this journey, it must have been about 8 months at least since he'd been feeling so rubbish from the ulcers, from everything else. And I just think that he was just feeling so good that he just needed didn't know what to do with himself. So I started to turn that into a positive, and I got a new jumping trainer, and he was a flat racer. So I decided to try starting him jumping. And he really, really took to it. He at first didn't know where his legs were, and the trainer that I started with sort of just said, you can't babysit him, you just need to let him figure it out for himself. And he started to get really into it and really enjoy it. And we went into the woods one day in between our lessons, and we went for a canter, and he got a bit faster, and I thought, okay, we'll just go with it. And 2 horses came out of the bushes, and he just came to a screeching stop, and I just went whoop, over his head.
Been there.
And I didn't hurt myself or anything, but mentally that just, all of my confidence was gone. And I think it was because where I'd had such a bad accident hacking with my old horse, it just brought it all back, and it completely knocked me. And then from then, even jumping or anything, I couldn't do it. And I just thought, what do I do here? Like, how do I get this back? And it knocked me for a long time, and it must have been about 6 months where he just got really naughty to jump. He would refuse anything that I pointed him at. He would drop his shoulder, he'd spin round, and it wasn't him, it was me holding him back, because I didn't believe I could do it, and I was just absolutely terrified. And so I decided, I'm not going to jump anymore at the moment. I can't, one day I will again, but maybe let's just focus on the flat work and get my confidence with the flat work. And I then decided, I was working at another yard then by this point. This was last July. And so I decided to move him to work on part livery, because it was a lot easier rather than going back and forth between the yard and work, which were about half an hour apart. And the yard, which we're still at now, has incredible facilities. It's got miles and miles of off-road hacking. It's a lot more of a competitive yard. So whereas the yard we were at before was quite a happy hacking yard. And so I took him there, and I was really excited about the prospect of moving and all of these adventures that it was going to open up for us. So in the first week, we went hacking with another horse that goes hunting a lot, and we went for a canter along the field, and the horse bucked and caught him and kicked him in the leg, and he just went instantly lame. His leg just dropped, and I went, he's broke his leg. It is just, something's happened. This isn't. There was just blood, and it was just terrifying. And got him back to the yard again, got the vet out, and he had to have stitches, and they said they would need to come back in 2 weeks because it was potentially fractured. And literally my heart just sunk, and I thought, we're back to square one again.
Yeah.
And he was on box rest for 6 weeks, but luckily there was no fracture, what could be shown on the x-ray, but we did treat it like it was fractured, because she said that there could be a hairline there that wasn't picked up in the x-ray. So to be sure, we just had to treat it as that. And luckily he came sound and he was fine, and he went back out. So that put us back by 6 weeks, but I think where we was moving yards, and it gave him chance to settle anyway, so it didn't really push us back in a way. And that's where I then got a new dressage trainer called Louise, and she is and was a livery at our yard, and she's also a physio. Oh, thank you.
I honestly was thinking we couldn't have picked a better owner to actually just take care of his needs, really, because yeah.
Thank you. So I then started to have lessons with her, and what was really good about the fact that she's a instructor and also a physio was she was really watching how he moves. And she said to me one day, she said, does he get a bad back often? And I said, yeah, he does. And I used to have a chiropractor out, and he would just do a little bit of massaging and things and sort him out. And I said, he does tend to get a bit sore in his back sometimes. And she said, right, okay. She said, did he have any injuries racing? And I said, as far as I know, he did break his pelvis on the gallops in training, because I'm quite good friends now. Since I've had him, I got in contact with his previous race owners, and found out a lot more of his previous history, which has been really helpful. So I found he broke his pelvis, and he also did his check ligament twice, and it was both on the left side. And we found that the back pain was a secondary pain to a ligament that's found between the sacrum and the sacroiliac. And the ligament was basically rock solid, which was causing him to compensate a lot. And then it was causing a bit of pain. And then where he was compensating, it was running through to the back.
Yeah.
And it really, when she gave him the massage, it just completely changed him. He just felt so much looser. And then in our lessons, then we was doing exercises that would really benefit from what we're trying to achieve from the physio. And by having lessons with her, he has just muscled up, and he looks so different in the space of a year. It's insane, and he feels amazing for it too. So today, I've done a lot of retraining work with him and just really pushed through it. I had in between all of this, I've had other falls and accidents on him, which have contributed to knocking my confidence and things like that. And I start to get a bit back, and then I lose it. And had quite a nasty one last year where he went over a pole, and we think this was to do with his sacroiliac joint, with the ligament, because there would be, she said, around the pelvis there's scar tissue, and sometimes she thinks that it catches and sends sort of a nerve down his back, which is awful. And he went over a pole, and it rolled towards him and spooked him, and he bucked, and I think that caught him, and he threw me off, and I had to go to hospital because before I broke my back, which was really scary too. But now that we're on top of the physio with that, I haven't had any, touch wood, problems since then with that. And now he's just such a changed horse, and it's not because of any magic lotions and potions or anything that I've done. It has just purely been persistence, and really sticking to it, all between all of the, obviously all the vet bills and the injuries and things, and it is quite disheartening sometimes when you do have to go back to square one, particularly when
I was going to say that. How mentally do you cope with that? Because I'm struggling, because I've literally, I feel still like a brat. I've literally had 5 days of box rest, and I'm kind of like, oh God, it's throwing my world upside down. You're constantly on that roller coaster with it.
I mean, he's on box rest at the moment. He had a abscess. Well, it was what they call a blood abscess. So he bruised his foot, and the blood just sat in his sole. And they had to cut a hole, and the same as they would do with a normal abscess, and drain it. And hopefully he's having the shoe back on tomorrow. I can start back with him. But I think what motivates me the most is, oh, you can see behind me, I've got photos everywhere of him, and my Instagram keeps me going. And that's one of the reasons why I started it, was back when he started to recover from ulcers. And I probably overpost a lot, but I post everything that we do, whether it's a good day, a bad day, all about his injuries and things. And then like last night, I was feeling a bit rubbish about not have ridden for 2 weeks, and I watch back, and I go back right to the beginning, and I just watch back on things of how far he's come, and I think, well, a bit of a rest won't do any harm. It will probably bring him back better. And I just make sure that I look at the pictures, and I just think how I just, I think horses aren't just for riding. They're a companion and they're a best friend. And I just go down and I do what I can with him. So whether that's a bit of click training, whether it's just sitting in his stable and sitting with him, or if he has a lay down, just sit with him and just give him a groom or give him a bath, and try and do other things other than riding, just to keep me going as well, because he's been he's all of this. It sounds like I've saved him and I've been really good for him and things like that, but as someone who suffers from bipolar myself, and I really, really struggle some days, and my anxiety sometimes goes through the roof, he's saved me in more ways than I can even begin to explain. And that's just from, if I go down the yard, if I'm having a really, really bad night, I'll go down the yard at 1 o'clock in the morning and I'll sit in his stable with him for half an hour and I'll have a cry, and then I go home and I feel so much better. And he's just been, I think it's just, yeah,
that makes me emotional like that, because I do think they're just such good therapy, aren't they? 100%. And as much as you've been through the absolute hill with him, he's done just as good for you as for him. And that's what I love the partnership element of it.
He is literally my best friend, and it's like he reads my mind as much as I can for him. And it's just, I can't even begin to explain it. There's no words to explain the sort of relationship and the bond that I've got with him. And even just talking about the journey that we've been on now, and just thinking back on 3 years ago, and I just think we're just in such a different place now. And I think we've got so much further to go, because he's only just starting. I really, really think he's just beginning to show his potential. We just got a new jump trainer and started jumping again at the beginning of the year, so this year. And he's gone from refusing a cross pole to absolutely flying a meter spread in a grid without even hesitating. And the slightest change of, this new trainer said in our first session, change his bit and try this. And the difference, I just couldn't believe it. And I'd always been one of those that I don't like changing things that don't need fixing, because I'm always scared to change something. And I kept the same bit that he'd come from in the charity, and I keep that for schooling because he's really good with it. But the bit change just for jumping was brilliant. And he was always really nappy to do dressage. I took him out the other day to just a small dressage test, and he absolutely smashed it and came third. And I'd never believed that we would ever be able to do dressage, because he couldn't concentrate on it. And originally I sort of had the vision of eventing him, and then when he sort of didn't really show that he enjoyed dressage, I sort of went, okay, right, we'll see if we can find something else. And he loves showing, but then it was just down to experience. And I just recently got a lorry in May, and that's been a massive game changer for us, because even just going out, he's now loading himself again that he was when I first got him. And we go out to a show and it's like we're at home. He is just such a different horse that it's not just one thing that I've done, it's just all of these little things, and it will be trial and error. And with everyone's horses, you've got to find what works for them, because what works for one might not work for another. And I think yards are quite guilty for it, liveries and things at yards, everyone has their own opinion, and everyone tells you what they think that you should do and what you shouldn't do. And I guess I hope that from sort of my story and things, particularly with when he had ulcers, is, follow your gut, and your horse better than anyone, even if you're still new to your horse, even if you've just got him like I had at the time. You just know. And I think it's great to have people around you that will support you and help you. But if people are being sort of negative, saying, oh, there's nothing wrong, or sort of contradicting what you think is wrong or what you think is right, then you know, trust yourself and follow what you believe.
Yeah, definitely. Can I just ask, has his crib biting got better
Yeah.
with the old? You see
Yeah.
that essentially there's a link, isn't there, sometimes
Mm.
between crib biting and horses.
Mhm.
And
He still
obviously
does it. He's doing it more at the moment because he's on box rest. But when he's not on box rest and when he's back into a normal routine, he doesn't really even try and do it on the door anymore. It's only if I've got him tied up in his stable, if he's eating his hay net and I'm grooming him or something, he'll have a little chew on his lead rope. But it's not very often that he really does it anymore.
Well, to put some positive spin on that, we had Grace, who was an ethical trainer, and she was saying that the majority of the 5-star event horses crib bite, and it's something to do with the difference in their brain that they've found. They like repetitive behavior. So crib biters are actually do become severely talented because they love repetitive systems, so that you can once you've taught them it, they can repeat it, and that's how they become. You know, she was saying a lot of the 5-star. So it's kind because I've got a severe fighter. So
have you?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think there's so much negativity around vices, and I think I'm quite contradictory to that sort of thing. My first horse was a weaver, and obviously Sis is a crib biter. But crib biting, wind sucking, weaving, box walking, I just think, you know, everyone's got a bad habit themselves. So why shouldn't horses have bad habits? I mean, I used to smoke, and I think it's no different to him having a cigarette, really. I mean,
yeah,
I'd much rather have a horse that had a bit of an annoying habit as such than I get on and it bolts me and tries to kill me every time I ride.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be put off by one. Having never had one and then had one now, it wouldn't put me. They're just destructive. That's all. That I would just say. I go through stable doors, but other than that, all right. It's such an inspiration. If anybody's got any questions, please put it in the chat box and we will try and get through to them. But it is so inspiring that you've managed to keep such positivity. Have you ever regretted? That's the big. Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I'd have gone for a cob?
No, he's actually, he turned into everything more than I ever wanted. I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but I have got his brother lined up to come to me in a couple of years. That's another sizzler. So they've got so Ian and Amanda, absolutely lovely couple. I actually got in contact with the race yard a few years ago because I wanted to find out before I started him jumping, because I knew he'd done a check ligament, but I didn't know which one it was or the severity of it. So before I jumped him, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I was doing the right thing and I wasn't going to cause any problems. And first off, wanted to know what leg it was. And they said, can you give us the number? Can we give you your number to Amanda? She'd love to hear from you. And I said, yeah, no, absolutely. And since then have been so in contact and like really, really good friends with his previous owners, and they've got 3 racing at the moment. So mine is obviously Seaside Sizzler. They've got Soto Sizzler, Foxtrot Sizzler, and Chelsea Sizzler, and they are absolutely brilliant. And they actually took me to one of their horses races the other day at Newbury in the owners enclosure, and it was an amazing experience to actually see the other side of it and how the lifestyle that my sis had from, you know, going into the stable to be tacked up, being, you know, paraded around the parade ring and everything, and all of the in the background, which was quite interesting actually to see all of that. And Ian actually said to me, he said, okay, so we've got Soto and we want you to have him when he finishes. And I sort of went, okay, let me check the bank account.
Yeah, we get insurance.
Yeah. But I don't think I don't think I'll ever regret it, because he's taught me more than I think any horse could have. And he's actually taught me so much patience and persistence. And if you really want something, you've got to work hard for it, you know. And I just couldn't imagine having it any other way, really. I mean, I would say yes, I felt like I regretted it in the first 6 months because of how difficult he was to physically handle. But I'm really glad that I didn't choose a different route or send him back or anything. I'm glad that I actually stuck by him, because he's such a lovely horse to have.
They do just take time, don't they? They take time to come out of that environment and to settle. I remember getting Reg, my story is very, very similar to yours, and I have got Reg's brother. So yeah, you'll end up with another one, I'll tell you now. But I remember in the first 6 months when he was napping and he wouldn't go to the yard, and I was just thinking, what have I done? I was absolutely terrified of him. Didn't want to ride him. Didn't want to get on anything. And now he's going around, well, when he's not on box rest, he's going around H's. So they do teach you so much. Resilience, I would say, is what I've learned, is that you just take it on and you get back up. And
I think it's just from the lifestyle that they've previously had as well is so different. I mean, I can't even imagine. It's like being a really, an Olympian to doing nothing, or doing something different.
A little house. Yeah, put you in a little house with a TV and going, this is your life now. You're not more.
They've seen so much and done so much in their careers, even when they haven't raced for very long. Even the training environment and the routine that they have on a yard. I mean, I've seen a huge difference going from DIY to part livery, because on the livery side, he gets fed at the same time as all the horses. They all get turned out at the same time, they get dinner at the same time, etc. And there's a lot more of a routine there, and I think he himself definitely prefers that. It really has settled him more, being in that sort of routine environment, as opposed to, if I get down a little bit late, he'd have the right hump when we was on DIY.
Yeah, mine are massively routine, to the point where Reg will be at 3:00. He usually comes in between 3:30. He'll be at the gate waiting.
They just know.
Where's my tea? And I think that's from the racing world. I think they've been brought up in a routined environment.
Definitely.
And they like that similarity all the time. So massively rewarding. So what's the plans for the future then, apart from getting possibly another Sizzler?
Well, he's 14 now, and I think I've still got plenty of time with him. I think that I mean, I will be, in my mind, I do think that obviously there will still be more issues and vet bills to come, and I think that he probably would retire maybe early 20s, because he raced for 7 years, so he had a long career, and I think competitively I wouldn't want to strain him too much, and I'm not one that wants to go out and compete really, really high level. I just want to go out and have a bit of fun with him. So my sort of plan is really just carry on with our jumping. My confidence is at a sky high at the moment. I'm just so happy with what we're doing and having fun. And I've got my first one-day event I've booked for October, so we're going to give that a go. We will give that a try.
All the details, where's it at?
Munstead, they've got one, and there's another one at Packersham as well. So we have gone round and done a hunter trial at Packersham, and I love the course there. So yeah, we're gonna go and give that a go, and see how we get on, and go from there, I guess. But I would love, goal wise, I mean, my goal was by the end of the year I want to be jumping a 70 course, and we already smashed that at the beginning of the year, and then we went and done a clear round at an 80, and I couldn't quite believe that we'd actually got round an 80 course. So yeah, I guess that's the sort of the
I totally agree. Start event is the best sport. It really is. If you just want something to just constantly leave you in disappointment and just constantly try.
Oh my gosh, I remember yours when the shoe got pulled off. I was like, no.
That's been my season. Let's be honest. I've not finished an event, but I'm got the face on at the minute because I can't go out eventing. I love the elation that you get from it at the end is what keeps you going back and back and back for that post cross country buzz when you do finally get over the finish line and with all 4 shoes on. What's Sizzler like with shoes? Is he bad? Is he good?
So he went through a phase last year of continuously pulling them. We went to go on a hound exercise and he pulled it on the ramp loading. And he was throwing it left, right, and centre. But actually, I've started, well, back then, so it's been maybe just nearly a year that we've been on it. I've been using that Keratex hoof hardener.
Yeah.
And it's a godsend. It's really, really helpful. He doesn't even have overreach boots on at all now, because I don't even put boots on him unless I'm jumping him now, because in the December time, he got cellulitis in his legs, and they went really, really scabby and really irritated. So I couldn't put anything on them. And I was one of these that was sort of like, I have to bandage, I have to boot all the time for anything that we do. And then I went from all of that to nothing, and I was like, okay, this is odd. But yeah, now he only has them on for jumping. But I do travel him in all 4 overreach boots because he's pulled a few shoes last year on the lorry, and where he sort of stands on himself sometimes. But when I first got him, he was pulling his shoes in the stable where he was obviously bored, where he hadn't been turned out. He was just pulling them. I remember coming down and the shoe had gone from this direction to that way.
I love them. Yeah, I'm hoping that we've gone on to a 5-week schedule now, which is crazy because the farrier keeps saying it's a fine line between he needs to grow some foot, but once we leave it past 6 weeks, they just come off. They literally fly off everywhere. It already says to me, just stop competing, but I'm kind of like, no, it's not an idea. So we're going 5 weeks, and touch wood, we're keeping the shoes on at the minute. That's not been the issue. So
apparently the horse's feet have been growing quite a lot quicker this year because the grass has shot through so much.
That's good then.
Yeah.
We need a bit of foot growth on Reg. Most feet's not as bad for some. He's got semi decent feet, so we should be all right. Oh, good. Oh, how exciting then! 1-day event this year.
Give it a go. Why not?
Enjoy it.
I think that's something that obviously all of the on-off journey has taught me is you sort of do literally need to seize the moment and just do it if you can. And when I got the lorry, I was like, right, okay, we are going to be out all of the time now because I just need to make use of it.
Yeah, Alicia's just said she's sure you're going to smash your 1-day event, and
thank you.
I'll be following now, waiting for this 1-day event. So kind of like, fingers crossed it's going to happen. Bless him. Oh my goodness, I just thought I better check time because we only got till 8, and we've been busy gassing, and it's 5:02. So remarkable. I cannot say anything, but I just want you to do so well because you pulled at my heartstrings tonight. It's that I just feel it is such a journey, and thank goodness he did find you, and thank goodness you put the time and effort where a lot of people would have just given up, wouldn't they, to be fair. And now you've got your best buddy for life, possibly 2. I'll follow that story as well with you, Gemma. So before we finish then, I always ask everybody, what is your best piece of advice to give out to the peeps?
Oh God.
Ooh, from Kat.
What would you suggest, Laurie? Why is it easier? I don't know when.
I'm between a 3.5 I do a mess of. Oh, you see, I can't join this. I'm old, so I don't need to do a test. I literally can drive. I can't reverse them, but legally I can drive 7.5 tons. So what would be your advice? 3.5 or a 7.5?
It would depend on if you just want to take your own horse You don't want to obviously be taking other people with you, etc. If you're happy to go out on your own, you're happy to travel with, if your horse is happy traveling on his own, or her own, I would say a 3.5 ton. That's what I've just got, and I absolutely love it. It's really easy to drive. I've got one of those. It's actually a rear ramp rather than a side ramp, and it's really, really nice. It does look like a small version of a 7.5 ton, but yeah, I'd say a 3.5. It's a lot easier to drive, and I personally feel like Sis travels much better in a 3.5. I think where they're from, especially with racing and things, they tend to travel them in the smaller lorries. I think it's just feels a bit safer, but I guess it's down to personal preference, but I think 3.5 is a lot easier, and it's a lot more manageable, because I think you have to do plating on the 7.5s as well, don't you? So it depends. I think it's like check what's financially viable as well. I think you have to do a new plate every year on the 7.5. If
I was looking at 7.5 ton just for, I want to take 2, and you can't really get them in a 3.5 ton.
Yeah.
But 7.5 ton, so we'll just have to do I've got a trailer at the minute, so I'll do a separate journey.
Oh god.
But with the trailer, I'm old enough that I don't need to do a trailer test. I had to get somebody at Elland Lodge to reverse my trailer out because I couldn't get it out. So I had to go, excuse me, can you just move my trailer? And they did, bless him. Thank you very much for sharing your story, Alicia. Inspired by your story. Can't wait to see about your one day event. I can't. I have a youngster. What can you suggest if you're lacking confidence? This is a really interesting one, because I think confidence is lost in seconds, and I think it can take years to get back. So what would you be your advice on gaining confidence?
So what I actually did, when I was wanting to get sort of my confidence back jumping, or in general, I actually went to a riding school, and had a few lessons on a schoolmaster, because then it really helped, to bring my confidence in myself, before, and then I could take that back to Sis. And I think having a person, well, obviously having someone with you, but I think a really good trainer or an instructor, and just, don't be afraid to hold back on how you're feeling. So explain why, and try and find the root cause of the lack of confidence as well, whether it was a fall, whether it was something that happened on the ground, and just build yourself back up. And I think also spending time on the ground with your horse as well, establishing that sort of relationship, especially if they are a youngster as well, and then that, I would say that would help sort of build your confidence, if that makes sense.
No, like groundwork's helped me massively. Love groundwork. It just gives you a bond with your horse, I think, as well. I feel quite closer to them now. Right, guys, we are up to absolute limit. So you're saying invest in an air jacket, a good body protector. That's a good idea. I always, when I'm doing anything new, put my body protector on. Very lazy and don't always put it on. And I probably should. But no, what's your best piece of advice, quickly?
Oh, God. Even if you're going through a really difficult time, stick with it, stay positive, and look back on, keep constantly check in with yourself, and look at how far you've come, and just remember that it's not always going to be it's not always going to be that difficult. There are really good things to come, and even if you do have setbacks, don't let it knock you. Just sort of keep going, and again, like I said before, follow your heart. If you just trust yourself, trust your own judgment, and your horse best. I hope that was all okay.
It was fantastic. Absolutely. It's so inspirational, and it's made me reassess like just the basics. I should just be appreciative of the basics of my horses as well. So thank you very much personally for that, Gemma, as well. Right, guys, it's time to call it a close, but everybody said thank you so much. It has been just such a fantastic evening, and Gemma, thank you so much for giving up your time and telling us your fantastic story, and all the best, and keep us updated.
I will, definitely.
All right, guys.
It was lovely to speak to you all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.